Oh, good morning, Exorcists. Time for your daily archive reminder. Ogre. Blue Ogre. Subject O-167, Type 1, semi-rural region in Exorcist called after murders of 3 high schoolers with supernatural cause suspected. Subject had failed to enter university, engage in employment, or attract any romantic relationships and had concealed these facts from his family out of shame for multiple years. Manifestation limited, but no execution recorded. Subject MIA. Exorcists were disciplined. Now, it's been a while since I've been personally in an instruction room, but need I remind you, until the stain is wiped away. Happy hunting. As above, so below. Why hello, welcome to the after chats of the Sin discussions, or the Sin archives. This time talking about our last ogre, Blue Ogre. Which man, whoever was making that name, either into like some archivist within Temerity or one of the exorcists on site, really? Because, alright, the picture we have of it, we're not sure if we see any colors. They're not just like pale or black and white. The image in my head of why it's called Blue Ogre is namely for the pun of like, oh, again, why would you double down on ogre? Like, even in the archive itself, that name sounds clunky. Classification, so if it's, I doubt it was someone within filing, so I feel it was an exorcist. And it was an exorcist who saw that there was something blue on the ogre or within the palace or something. And they just thought they had the best chance for a pun. Anywho, yes, so, what these after chats are, this is where we're going into the rough possible mechanics, because we don't actually have details on what the hunt was, or the palace, or any of the specific domains. All we have is the previous description just listed off in the archive. So, to begin with, the traumas, the origin of any sin. So, who or what pushed you into this hole, who or what is keeping you from going over the edge, and what are you most ashamed of? What put you in the hole is probably a lot of things. Again, the list of 3 of the failure to get into university, lack of job prospects, and lack of any kind of relations. The thing I think is keeping them from going over the edge is the family. They're not wanting to disappoint them, they're hiding these failures, trying to present themselves as that good and successful kid. And for what are you most ashamed of, I think himself. So I think that was actually pretty clear-cut, outside of the fact there's alternative things that have all piled up into leading what pushed him into this hole. But onto said manifestation, the thing formed from these traumas. So we got a simple one. No crazy strings attached, nothing too wild, it's just a type 1, so separate from the host, they're not directly influencing each other, though the ogre is still clingy with the host. Also, hi, this section is recorded after, because I realized I forgot to actually mention this part. Holy cow, this is our first example of a sin that wasn't executed, and also helping a host escape. Because yes, you can actually resolve a sin, you can help a host heal through their traumas, or at least enough to the point that the thing demanifests. Just as answering these questions can hurt the sin or stun it, if you can answer all of them and help the host, it can potentially just demanifest. Heal the wounds. The psychic see calming. Though this is obviously not what CAIN wants, hence the still disciplining. Also, letting another, again, proved rogue psychic who had already manifested a sin go? I can get the idea of the exorcist wanting to help, and I can get that urge, but from the perspective of CAIN, you just had 2 exorcists not kill a sin, for one. Sure, they still got the job done, the sin's gone. But they let the they let the psychic get away. No wonder they were disciplined. But hopefully things are going well for that host now. Doesn't always end in tragedy. So we actually don't get the best look at Blue Ogre. We get a decent look, a nicely spooky look, but Bucephalus we had more details on the host and how they fused to the sin, and with Minotaur we had a full body picture of what the sin looked like. With Blue Ogre it's just peeking through a door and a single light behind them, which I think adds to one of the domains later, but in any case. Looking less monstrous than the other 2. It's still creepy in that horror movie way of like leaning around a corner and it's much larger with its hand up in the top of the door frame. It looks sad, miserable, it's less the monstrous, horrific, or ugly. It's, well, ugly part could be there. Long, greasy black hair, drenched in front of them, the horrible, bulbous hunchback, the face half hidden. Also, with the way the hair is pictured, it seems to crawl or move. Though that could be me reading way too much into it, they could have just turned their head and it draped down onto the staircase. But I think this is an image of himself. And the reason I bring up his appearance, or what he thinks of himself, or that mockery, even though it's not a direct possession, is because it's all about appearance with this host. It's about the fact he's lying what he perceives as these massive failures of this true self he's supposed to be ashamed of. It's something he's hidden and tucked away, keeps separate from him, is afraid anyone else that he loves would see. Which finally gets onto the domains. So I'm actually pretty certain, though you could obviously make other cases within the comments, and I recommend them, but I'm actually pretty confident in these three. So the first, the Lash calls you brother, and I think, unlike the Minotaur, we actually have a case for a crusher. Namely due to the dead high schoolers, with suspected supernatural cause. And it's a little bit of a stretch, but the idea that this crusher had formed or manifested behind or because of these different high schoolers. And usually it trails you, it doesn't go to kill you right away. So they might say they feel strange presences, that there was something watching them, stalking them, because for the reports to be suspected supernatural case or cause, and the disappearance of the killer are no obvious evidence. It just demanifested, which the crusher does once its job's done, forming for each individual that follows. And the general just tone of the Lash calls you brother, this entity here to follow you and remind you of these things you're ashamed of. And with a lot of the traumas possibly are probably stemming from the character's high school, or the host's high school, kinda makes sense that high schoolers would be targeted or picked up by this thing, or manifest around them. Taking either the image of this potential bully, this looming judgmental authority figure, or just a better version of yourself, the one you failed to live up to, or the lie you tell other people. The next one I'm banking on is the unseeing of things. Partly because the image might be showing it hiding, or the fact it's never fully showing itself, there's one dingy light in the background behind it, and playing into the fact that the host is hiding something. He's hiding everything he's ashamed of. He's hiding himself. This entire palace is out in a semi-rural area. Or at least its entrance. It's something hidden away, tucked away, that doesn't want to be seen. The hosts themselves, these failures, and the sin. And for the third and final, I'm thinking that awful flesh. Not going for the monstrous or default, just making a tough enemy, but just the disgust at himself. At his body, namely falling in the relation side of it, but also what the sin looks like. Again, that long greasy hair, covering the face, wanting to hide its face, that hunchback within the distended arm, reaching up into the top of the doorframe. This thing that hates how it looks, that's trying to hide itself, and is consistently reminding itself of how terrible it is with the Lash calls you brother. And lastly, for that awful flesh, the fact it looks pathetic. I mean, it's still dangerous, it's still a sin, it's still a full-blown ogre. But compared to the previous two images, this thing's a wimp. Or at least looks it. When it comes to physicality, it's not that imposing blocking of a hallway as the Minotaur, or the, again, monstrous mount that is Bucephalus. It's spindly on its ends, a bit chunky in its center, and pulling itself and hiding around corners. Now for the Afflictions, I'm again heading towards circling the drain. Just the idea that giving up on something, that any of these dreams of actually getting a job, getting into university, finding a relationship, that the host has given up on them, and is now just planning on hiding them, just trying to hide. Not fight this thing, just go away, run. Find a nice, dark, warm corner, and wait until this all passes over. Or you just die. As for the palace, I'm thinking it's a high school. Namely with the focus on the high schoolers brought up with the three dead, and trying to get into some kind of university, so they had recently graduated high school or did a few years ago, or we don't know the exact age of the host. We could kind of assume pretty close by if they haven't gotten a job, never had relations. You know, if we're running with the theme of the high school being the source of a lot of these traumas, or the, at least first times these failures begun to build up. The hallways of a high school or this auditorium littered with rewritten, failed, rejected resumes, failed love letters, slightly bloodied graduation caps that added up to nothing, rusted bleachers filling any of the large spaces, still leaving it cramped and claustrophobic, the hallways always seeming just a bit too small or crowded, as if there was a whole crowd of people there, even though it's empty, just filled with all their junk, the failed reports, failed grades, and never being able to trust the lights or any of the lockers, all the windows blocked out with cloth to try and hide all of these shames within these walls, never to be seen by anyone outside of it. The ogre able to suddenly claw its way through some of these old classrooms, the blackened lights, closets, or even just slightly ajar lockers, tearing itself apart, but always still keeping that same mug he despises. Another point to it potentially being a high school is the entrance. Even though we don't have an exact detail of where, I think it is in the high school, the reason why those high schoolers got caught up in this mess. With all that, you tell me, what do you think Blue Ogre had? What were its manifestations, its domains, the exact traumas that added up to the Blue Ogre? And an additional one, not just what are its mechanics, but why do you think it's called Blue Ogre? I'm really set on the pun theory, that there was some blue coloring that we just can't see in the image. But yes, as one of our favorite Temerity Archivists would say, happy hunting. As above, so below.